morning, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Jersey Shore. Thank you for joining us. We who bring a teaching of hope, we who bring a saving message, who welcome all in our doors, the joyful, the heartbroken, atheists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, queer, trans, all who are searching, seeking, looking for more meaning, more service, more love. All of us gathered here together. Worship is led this morning by our minister, Reverend Don Fortune. If you care to tweet during today's service, you can use the hashtag UUCSJS. Before we begin our service, I need to read you many words about our COVID-19 safety protocols. In-person worship during a pandemic is different than in-person worship used to be. Previously, we met in the sanctuary, sitting close together in rows of chairs. We sang and hugged, chatted, and had refreshments after the service. In order to keep everyone safe from infection by the coronavirus, our seating has been adjusted to provide adequate social distancing, and we ask that you refrain from hugging and keep your mask on while on the property, even outside after service if you are talking to someone. We ask that you not sing at this time because even the best masks are not 100% safe when people breathe forcefully in song. Instead, please hum along with the music and hymns today. We ask that you maintain 6 feet of social distancing while you are here. Yes, this is a challenge, and no, nobody really likes it, but our commitment to the safety of our most vulnerable members requires all of us to endure some discomfort. There will be no refreshments or indoor coffee hour this morning. Again, this is to keep everybody safe. It is impossible to drink or eat with a mask on. If you wish to visit with others, please have your conversations outside where the risk of infection is greatly reduced. When the service is over, please exit through these doors. This is the airplane part. At the front of the sanctuary, if you are able. Those with mobility challenges can, of course, exit through the main door or however you're most comfortable. We are asking for this to avoid a bottleneck of people in our small foyer. Now, a word about what you'll see from the worship team this morning. Reverend Don and I will both be speaking from up here while wearing masks. Gina will sing with a mask. Jess will also wear one as she shares the time for all ages. We are aware that the sound, especially online, is not as good as we would like. So, the good news is that a clear barrier structure is in creation and will be available soon, but for now we apologize for our muffled voices and we'll do the best we can. Are you understanding me so far? I've been practicing teaching with the mask on. So. The air handling system in the sanctuary is able to cleanse the air at a rate comparable to a hospital treatment room, and we can thank Jeff Taylor for his efforts at maintaining and taking care of that system. We are doing everything we can to make sure people are as safe as we can. No system will be 100% foolproof, but we are making every effort to keep everybody safe. Okay, safety lecture is now over. Let me remind you that we are now live streaming today's service on our Facebook page, and we wish a warm welcome to all of you joining us virtually. We welcome your comments as well as your joys and sorrows on that platform. Please remember that this video will be on the internet, so do not share information best kept private. Welcome to worship.
Wanderer, worshiper, lover of the Welcome. Welcome into this place of healing. Welcome into this place of challenge and growth. Welcome into this place of imperfection and aspiration. Here you are whole in your brokenness. Here you are holy in your shame. Here you are wholly loved always. We light our chalice this morning, the symbol of our free faith, a beacon of hope historically for those who seek comfort and justice. We light this chalice for those who came before us, paving the way through a history of seekers named heretics and blasphemers by those who feared our ideas. We light this chalice for those who will follow us, building upon what we create now, today, in this space made holy by our presence in it. We light this chalice to remind ourselves of our commitment to this moment and each other. I invite you now to hum along. I know it's hard, but please, I want everybody to be safe. So I invite you now to hum along as Gina leads us in our first hymn.
For you this morning, but I'm going to need a little bit of help with it. So, can you see this card I'm holding?
No.
That's right, it says no. So, on one side it says no, and on the other side it says
yes.
You guys are really good at this. I thought last week I tapped you out for helping, but I see you have more potential. So during the story, I'm going to hold this card up, and when I do, you're going to say
Yes.
Or
No.
Excellent. All right, here we go. So this story is called Answer Mountain, and it's written by Sarah E. Squire. It starts out kind of familiar with long ago and far away. Oh no, it might be just around the corner of yesterday. Anyway, that part doesn't matter. What matters is that it's about a town, okay? And this town sits in a quiet little valley tucked up against a mountain. And carved on the side of that mountain are the big words, no. No, right? This is Answer Mountain. No one knew where the words came from or why they were there. They just knew that they've always been there. But oh my goodness, the people who lived in that town cuddled into the mountain, they were so glad that those words were there. Because whenever they had a question, all they had to do was look up to the mountain and the answer was no. Making decisions was very simple. And life went on smoothly and easily in the town cuddled into the mountain until one day. Now, on that particular day, Ma Custis was about to make dinner for her family. And she just couldn't decide, because sometimes you can't, whether to make stew or steak, pasta or potatoes, dumplings or donuts. So she went out into the yard. Should I make liver for dinner tonight? She asked, and she looked up at the mountain, and the mountain said, no. All right, I knew that, really. I mean, nobody's crazy about liver. But should I make steak for dinner? And the mountain said, no. Should I make chicken? No. Should I make tacos or tofu, baked beans or broccoli, pork chops or popcorn? The mountain said nothing but no. Ma Custis asked more questions until the sun disappeared behind the mountain. She kept on asking questions until the sun came up around the other way. And all the mountain ever said was, the answer is no. Because Ma couldn't get an answer that was any kind of answer, she and her family went all night, all the next day, and the next night without having dinner. Finally, Ma just gave up and made liver anyway, even though the mountain said no, and even though everyone hated liver, because liver was the first thing she thought of. But Ma Custis had had enough. She glared at the mountain, she stamped her foot, she shook her fist. Why is the answer always no? Can't you just say yes for once? Ma turned around and stomped away to ring the town bell and call a town meeting. Well, when that bell rang, the whole town came running, from the oldest man with the longest beard to the youngest kids who still needed to be carried. No one would miss a town meeting. They all came and they all listened carefully as Ma Custis told her story. Seems to me, she said, that we've got a problem. That mountain just isn't helping us like it should. Seems to me it would be nice if it said yes for a while. The townsfolk knew Ma Custis had a point, but they didn't much like this idea. Changing something that had been the same for so long? But after they thought, and then thought some more, they finally nodded. The mountain would have to be recarved. Mason Sharp, the stone carver, nodded along with the rest of them. He scratched his nose, he adjusted his cap. Slowly he gazed up the length of the mountain. Then he cleared his throat, and he said in his gravelly voice, "Looks to me like I could do the carving." And so he did. Mason spent the next 2 weeks up on the side of the mountain chiseling and chipping and carving away and coming down only when it got too dark to see. And when he was done, the mountain said, yes. Mason rang the bell to call the town together, and once again they all came running, from the oldest woman with the whitest hair to the youngest kids who still needed to be carried. They all wanted to see the new sign, and they all wanted to cheer for the stone carver and his hard work. Ma Custis, who had started all of this, came right up to the front of the crowd. She figured she ought to be the first person to ask the first question of this new and different mountain, since she discovered the problem with the old one. She stepped right up to the foot of the mountain, looked way up to the top, and asked, "Should I make liver for dinner?" Well, the mountain said, yes. Well, now, Ma Custis almost fell over with surprise. They didn't like the sound of this. Ma Custis's family grumbled the loudest. But, well, I can't, Ma said. I mean, I just can't serve liver again. I promised I wouldn't. Are you telling me I should break my promise? And the mountain said, yes. The grumbling got louder, and Ma Custis, while she glared at the mountain again, she stamped her foot, she shook her fist, and she turned to the townspeople and said, this just isn't right. This can't be right. What are we going to do? Once again, the townsfolk put on their thinking caps, and everyone thought. Ma Custis thought, Pa Custis thought, all the Custis kids, who probably thought the hardest because they were worried about that liver. Finally, the smallest but one of the Custis kids piped up. Why does there have to be just one answer? Can't we have more? The townspeople, they gasped. No one had ever thought of this before. They mumbled, they grumbled, they talked among themselves. Finally, they decided the mountain ought to say something like this. The answer is sometimes yes, and sometimes no, and sometimes wait and see, and sometimes I just don't know. Mason, the stone carver, who had been listening to all of this talk, he cleared his throat, scratched his nose, adjusted his cap, and he said, I think I can do it. I don't mind. I mean, not really. Even if I did just finish that new change. But, well, it's going to take a lot of time. And I can't work all day like I did last time. How about if I work when I can, and we'll just hang up some kind of sign on the mountain that lets people know the answer is coming. And so it was. The funny thing was that for a while, Mason worked on the mountain every day. And for a little while, everyone in town waited eagerly to see the new answer. But soon, well, the stonemason got tired of climbing the mountain every day, and everyone else got tired of waiting. And they all started asking each other questions and helping everyone else find the answers that seemed to fit. The townspeople realized that different questions usually have different answers. And sometimes the same question has more than one answer. And that there were many more answers than they had imagined. And all of that was fine with them. After a while, they thought that maybe the answer the mountain was giving them right then, just as it was better and more sensible than any other answer it had ever given. And so they left it as it was. And the mountain said, you guys don't have to read this one because it was under construction. We are now going to light our children's religious education lantern. So as the children exit for their religious education classes, they'll take the light and community represented in our flaming chalice with them. We light this lantern for our children and youth and for us, celebrating the flame of faith lighted in each of us, honoring the light each of us brings into the world, rejoicing in the community that we create together. Now, the children will be circulating around the sanctuary to collect donations this week, so if you brought anything for the food bank, the Coalition Against Rape and Abuse, or the animal shelter, first of all, thank you. And secondly, when you exit the sanctuary through the back doors, you can just bring it up here. There's a basket right there behind where the Urbach family is sitting, and you can put your donations in there. So the kids can all come gather here. We'll be outside, so when you come to sign up the kids, you can just come right out the side door.
We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go. We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go.
From the Unitarian minister and scholar, Reverend Mark Morrison Reed. central task of the religious community is to unveil the vines that bind each to all. There is connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. It is the church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own, but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together our vision widens and our strength is renewed. Now is the time in our service when we share those things that bring us joy or concern, that weigh heavy on our hearts, or make our spirits soar. So, there's tables up in the front. Yeah, and so there's pebbles on the table, and you can come up and drop a pebble in the sacred pebble vessel. If you wish to demarcate a joy or concern.
This is the time in our service when we share through written words or through the image of pebbles in water, our joys and our concerns, our sorrows. A book is provided in the foyer in which you are invited to write whatever joys or sorrows you have as you enter. I will read now what you will share. Note of concern from Gina Brochet. Please send a prayer for healing, comfort, and peace to my mom, who is in the ER as we speak, and may need gallbladder surgery, and for Papa, who is in rehab at the moment. We'll hold that family all in our prayers. It's a joy from Melissa, who says her nephew Jaden and a friend completed a bike trek across America, and they were able to welcome the riders as they dip their front tires in the Atlantic Ocean on Tuesday. Jess shares a joy that the Saffanoff boys have started rehearsals for this year's Nutcracker already. And an anonymous joy is here. So good to see us again. That is just right. I invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer. Let us open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain and the soft, gentle coming of love. Blessed and holy creation, universe of wonder, mystery beyond definition. We share today our joys and sorrows. Our hearts are touched by this shared ritual, and we are connected. We offer into the care of the universe, the most holy, the great mystery, all of the joys and sorrows represented by the pebbles dropped in the water today. We hold in our hearts this morning those affected by the COVID-19 virus, those actively sick, recovering, or grieving the loss of a loved one. Here in New Jersey, we're averaging around 2,300 new cases and 18 deaths from coronavirus each day. Hospitals in Idaho have begun rationing care, and people everywhere are hurting and afraid. We mark with sadness the one-year anniversary of the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. With this congregation prayed for, even amongst the atheists, for so many years. We prayed for those who are distant from us and for those who are near but we cannot embrace. We pray for those who are unhoused, for those who are persecuted, for those who are in danger, both inside and outside their homes. We pray for those who are hungry, for those who feel hopeless, and we wish for them nourishment of both body and spirit. All of these joys and sorrows, all of those symbolized by pebbles, all of those still too tender to be acknowledged even in the privacy of our own hearts, we offer them all into the care of a universe of wonder and mystery, that our burdens be lifted and our hearts be made full in this sharing. Amen.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
We will now take a moment to give and receive the morning offering. Instead of having ushers move amongst everyone, which would compromise the safe social distancing boundaries we are striving to maintain, baskets to accept your offering will be placed at the exit so you can safely make your contribution as you leave after worship. Those of you at home and those here who so choose can text your offering to 609-293-4495 Or if you're using the electronic order of service, follow the link to donate online. For those participating online, please visit uucsjs.org and click on the yellow donate button for ways to give. 80% of our annual budget comes from the pledges and donations of friends and members of this congregation. Each week we see a small and sometimes great miracle happen as people open their hearts and share their resources with this community of spiritual growth. No matter how you support us, we appreciate you and your generous heart. After all, your donation is what keeps us going. And no matter how those gifts are offered, they are always most gratefully received. During the offertory response, please remember to hum.
To you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Our reading today is the opening paragraph of Waldo Emerson's essay Nature, originally published in 1836, with the language and pronouns commonly used at that time. And at the end of the reading, we will have a moment of silent reflection before this morning's sermon. Emerson wrote, "To go into solitude, a man needs to retire as much from his chamber as from society. I am not solitary whilst I read and write, though nobody is with me. But if a man would be alone, let him look at the stars. The rays that come from those heavenly worlds will separate between him and what he touches. One might think the atmosphere was made transparent with this design, to give man in the heavenly bodies the perpetual presence of the sublime. Seen in the streets of cities, how great they are. If the stars should appear one night in 1,000 years, how would men believe and adore and preserve for many generations the remembrance of the city of God which had been shown? But every night come out these envoys of beauty and light the universe with their admonishing smile."
Before I begin, I feel the need to perhaps apologize and beg your indulgence. Some of my healthcare stuff is causing me to overheat, so I am not robing until I can get that figured out, because I figure it would be impolite for me to faint during the sermon. That's it. On this day, September 19th, in 1836, a group of intellectuals, though not academics, gathered in Boston for the inaugural meeting of what they called the Hedges Club, named for Frederick Henry Hedge. The group only met when Hedge was in town, visiting from where he lived in Bangor, Maine. The membership list contains names both notable and familiar. Hedge, of course, Ralph Waldo Emerson, George Ripley, George Putnam, Amos Brown Alcott, Orestes Bronson, Theodore Parker, Henry David Thoreau, William Henry Channing, James Freeman Clark, Christopher Peirce Cranch, Converse Francis, and Sylvester Judd. Such a truly enlightened group as this, of course, permitted women members as well, always listed secondarily, though. Those women included Sophia Ripley, Margaret Fuller, Elizabeth Peabody, Ellen Sturgis Cooper, and Caroline Sturgis Tackam. According to Wikipedia's rendering of the history, which has its pluses and minuses, this group of young idealists gathered to discuss the issues of the day apart from, and very much in aversion to, the stuffy bunch currently dominating public discourse, that being the faculty at Harvard and the ministers of the Unitarian Church. There was a fair bit of overlap between those two groups, and some in the Transcendental Club were, in fact, Unitarian ministers as well. The group came to be known as the Transcendental Club by the public, and thus it is called still, nearly 200 years later. The group met and held discussions. Some wrote essays which they discussed, or they would consider something published by one of the many periodicals in circulation. Most of their own efforts at writing were rejected for publication in the literary journals of the day, so they established their own publication called The Dial in 1840, and it was edited by Margaret Fuller. In it, they shared essays and opinions. As an outlier in an already full market, The Dial never gained more than about 200 subscribers and eventually ceased publication after 4 years. Emerson's essay, Nature, we heard from earlier, became to be the foundational document of what eventually became the Transcendentalist movement of the 19th century. Unitarianism, in its early days, was trending toward the intellectual realm of strict logic and reason as tools with which to read holy texts, which they argued supported their notion that humanity was the greatest creature on earth, endowed with intellect and great capacity for learning and industry, limited only by the intellect and inner strength of each man. I like to say that this is where Unitarians began to separate the brain from the passions of the heart, largely due to the writings of William Ellery Channing, who was the uncle of William Henry Channing, who was in the Transcendentalist Club. Transcendentalism pushed back against that stark logic, seeking to reach enlightenment and transcendence through connection, as opposed to removal from the natural world. They argued that enlightenment, or salvation, could be achieved not by removing oneself from the coarse nature of the world, but by embracing it. Emerson's essay reflects the beautiful language of the time. It tastes much like Thoreau's essays, and yes, even those of William Ellery Channing. Let me share another passage with you. And again, please remember that the style of the time used strictly masculine language in speaking about all humanity. Emerson wrote, "To speak truly, few adult persons can see nature. Most persons do not see the sun. At least they have a very superficial seeing. The sun illuminates only the eye of the man, but it shines into the eye and the heart of the child. The lover of nature is he whose inward and outward senses are still truly adjusted to each other, who has retained the spirit of infancy even into the era of manhood. His intercourse with heaven and earth becomes part of his daily food. In the presence of nature, a wild delight runs through the man. in spite of real sorrows. Nature says, he is my creature, and Lord, all his impertinent griefs, he shall be glad with me. Not the sun or summer alone, but every hour and season yields its tribute of delight. For every hour and change corresponds to and authorizes a different state of the mind, from breathless noon to grimmest midnight. Nature is a setting that fits equally well a comic or a morning piece. In good health, the air is a cordial of incredible virtue. Crossing a bare common in snow puddles at twilight under a clouded sky, without having my thoughts in any occurrence of special good fortune, I have enjoyed a perfect exhilaration. I am glad to the brink of fear. In the woods, too, a man casts off his years as the snake his slough, and at what period soever of life is always a child. In the woods is perpetual youth. Within these plantations of God, a decorum and sanctity reign. A perennial festival is dressed, and the guest sees not how he should tire of them in 1,000 years. In the woods, we return to reason and faith. There I feel that nothing can befall me in life, no disgrace, no calamity leaving in my eyes, which nature cannot repair. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by blithe air and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. I become a transparent eyeball. I am nothing. I see all. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. I am a part or particle of God. Emerson wrote beautifully. The Transcendentalist movement of the 19th century caused an uproar in theological circles. Now, the Unitarians were deemed heretics for disbelieving the Holy Trinity, and the Unitarians considered Transcendentalists to be utter lunatics given over to the whimsy of dreams instead of deep and serious thought. I can only imagine what the dominant Calvinist culture thought of the Transcendentalists. So we see much of Transcendentalism in Unitarian Universalism, in our principles, that all people have worth and dignity and are capable and deserving of the divine love of transcendence, that we ought to use justice and equity and compassion in our relationships with each other, that we accept each other and encourage spiritual growth, that we all can and should seek truth where we find it, in responsible ways that do not harm others, that we use our conscience to make decisions and vote on issues as a group, to seek a world of peace and liberty and justice for everyone, and maintain a keen awareness of and respect for the interdependent web of all things of which we are but a part. You spend a lot of time talking about our principles, but we don't often spend much time talking about our 6 sources of wisdom. And I will spare you the seminary lecture on those for today, but I will talk about the first source. It is described thusly. These are our sources of wisdom and spirituality. And it says, the direct experience of that transcending mystery and wonder, affirmed in all cultures, which moves us to a renewal of the spirit and an openness to the forces which create and uphold life. James Freeman Clarke, who's one of the original members of the Transcendentalist Club, was at the time and remained a Unitarian minister, as was fellow original member Theodore Parker. He and Parker were the outliers among clergy in Greater Boston for speaking out strongly against slavery. Many of Boston's wealthy elite got to be wealthy and elite in the shipping trade, including the transport of African people who were then enslaved in North America. But I digress. Clark saw the potential of recreating churches as religious communities where people interacted with each other on more than just Sundays, across the lines of wealth and education. In 1885, he wrote an essay entitled 5 Points of the New Theology, which concluded with this description of his new version of Christianity that he offered. The fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, the leadership of Jesus, salvation by character, and the continuity of human development in all worlds, or the progress of mankind onward and upward forever. As antiquated as those words sound to us today, imagine how they landed in a time and place where people believed that you got into heaven based on preordination, and that your character had nothing to do with it. That God simply had you on a list of yes or no. This man was suggesting that our behavior in this life would lead to our salvation, and that the potential for accomplishment and enlightenment and transcendence was unlimited, onward and upward forever. The title of this morning's sermon is Making Progress in Moving Forward. So far, I've said a lot about a brief period in the development of our faith from almost 200 years ago. What I'd like you to consider then for a moment is what Clark might think if he were to sit among us this morning. Or better yet, what if he were attending remotely via the internet? This was a man devoted to granting all people access to worship and the experience of the holy. What might he think of our Facebook live stream? I think we might say that we have indeed made progress since his tenure as a minister in the swamps of Boston. What about moving forward? We are in the fall equinox this week, that marvelous space precisely between the midsummer and the midwinter. It is a good time to reflect and consider what we might do as we crest this hill before the long, dark nights ahead. What lies ahead of us? What are the possibilities that await us? We have learned a great deal in the past 18 months. We have learned how to work within what we had previously considered impossible constraints. We've learned how to visit family and friends, to connect socially in ways that protect us and those we love. We've learned a lot of technology in order to adapt to this new reality, and we figured out a myriad of solutions to these challenges we could not have imagined 3 years ago. As we sit here in the sanctuary, safely spaced and masked, what might we imagine when we think of Clark's onward and upward forever? What does onward and upward look like for us in the 21st century, in a pandemic, global climate change? Whatever it is, I think it will include things that are familiar, even the simplest things, having our annual service auction, despite the restrictions that we must include to keep everyone safe. We will not let this virus prevent us from living. I think it includes things we have not yet imagined. Who among us would have imagined even 2 years ago worship via Zoom? Music recorded by beloved and familiar voices and set to slideshows to stir our hearts. We have the capacity to do so much more than we think we can. I invite you to sit for a moment now and consider what you personally have survived and what you have learned and accomplished in the last year and a half. Let's give that some fun. We learned a lot, didn't we? We learned and experienced a lot. Now I want us to take a moment not to imagine specifics about what might lie ahead, but I want you to feel in your heart the faith we have in ourselves and in our communities to handle whatever lies ahead. Think on that a moment. There is evidence that we can adapt, overcome, survive, and even thrive. It is all around us in this room. I invite you to be where you are and trust that we will get through whatever is ahead. Take a moment and embrace that feeling of trust. It's a wonderful thing to feel held in trust, is it not? What we have done and what we will do does not rely on a single person, but on the collective efforts of the members of this congregation, of the towns in which we live, and the greater communities beyond. You are not alone. We are not alone. The progress we will make happen as the result of our collective efforts will happen as the result of those collective efforts. Individualism will not serve us in times like these. Together, we can move forward into the unknown. Your liberation, your freedom, your enlightenment, dare I say it, your salvation, is caught up entirely with my own and mine with yours. Our progress, our future, Clark's vision of onward and upward forever, it all depends on our collective efforts. I have faith in the collective us. Sometimes I have faith in me. Sometimes I have faith in others. I know for certain that when we pool our resources, our energy, our efforts, that our collective liberation will come to be. As we go forth into this new season, into this new church year, into this new reality, may it be so. Blessed be and amen. I invite you now to hum along with our closing hymn. There's more than somewhere Gina will lead us.
there is more hope somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more hope somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. There is more peace somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more peace somewhere.
Our closing words today come from the 20th century, at least, from Howard Zinn. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many, where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however a small way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is in itself a marvelous victory. Let us now extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Like you always were for me, and the world
Sanctuary on the board. There are a few announcements this week. You can help raise money to support UUC SJS. Here's how. You can purchase a box of Friends Helping Friends shopping pass for $5 each. See Nick Bonar today at the sidewalk out front. There he is. Also, November 13th, remember November 13th, UUC SJS will once again have an exciting auction. Last week we told you that we need the auction to ensure our survival due to the budget shortfall. But another difference this year is that we need to produce the auction catalog earlier because our fearless or potentially fearful leader, Deb, is having surgery in October. So please think hard about what you can donate. Look at the ads in the midweek message each week. Deb or someone will be at the auction table outside or in the rear of the sanctuary. Feel free to discuss your auction ideas and do get your donation ideas in soon. Colleen Shabazz of the NAACP has invited our congregation to participate in a community walk this Thursday at 4 p.m. at the American Legion Hall at 1510 Adriatic Avenue in Atlantic City with New Jersey Attorney General Andrew Bruck. It might be a great time to show up and listen to what he has to say about the state of things in Atlantic City and New Jersey. And several of us remember that a lot of exciting, important relationships and things started with community walks in Atlantic City that we're now part of still. The worship team needs volunteers to train as worship associates. If you are interested, please drop Reverend Don an email or speak with them today, and they will get you on board eagerly. Worship will also need more technology people as we move to more complex and accessible modes of multi-platform worship. We currently have an online presence on Facebook Live that uses a single camera and no other tech. We will be using funds from our Wake Know Our Vision grant to upgrade so we can reach more people on Sundays. Please see Pat Kennedy to get involved with our tech crew. Pat is running tech today. And from the UU Pandemic Response Team, in order to continue to stay safe and prevent spread of COVID, we are asking all participants to please, after the service, we encourage you to exit out the east doors leading to the deck. Those with mobility needs can exit through the usual front doors as needed. We encourage everyone to continue conversations outside. However, due to New Jersey still being in the high-risk range for COVID and Atlantic County being at the top of the list for transmission in the state, we are still asking everyone to continue to distance and keep your masks on if you are engaging in conversations outdoors. Events this week are listed in your order of service and online at uucsjs.org/calendar. Highlights this week include Heartfulness Meditation on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Men's group on Tuesday, Buddhist Sangha on Friday, and next Sunday, please join us when Reverend Carol Hagg will lead a worship service entitled The Call You Cannot Refuse. Reverend Hagg is an ordained minister and retired religious educator who currently serves as the chair of the Development Committee at Murray Grove. Her sermon will touch on the history of John Murray's arrival in North America and the still commanding ideas of universalism in our lives today. And as veteran Murray Grove campers, my children are huge fans of Reverend Carol and can vouch for her amazing spirit and energy. Now let us share in a moment of silent reflection to consider today's message and the meaning it has in our lives.